Mentor Konnect, a new platform designed to accelerate your personal and professional development.
Welcome to this session of Mentor Connect. I'm Naren Chirmule and Virender Seda here along with me. We have been conducting these interviews of professionals in the biotech industry, primarily for students, for professionals, entrepreneurs, to learn from experiences of these professionals. And so today I'm very delighted to invite Akhil Kumar, who's Chief Medical Officer at Aurigene Oncology. He's got a lot of experience in drug development in many aspects. But over the last several years, he and I have been talking a lot about cell and gene therapy in India. He can focus on that, but we can talk about many other aspects of it. But I'll ask him to introduce himself and give a brief overview, and then we can get into question and answers. So over to you, and thank you for coming, Akhil.
No, thank you, Naren. Thank you for inviting me here. So first of all, I wish to thank all of you and each one of you for your time today. So as Naren said, my name is Akhil Kumar. I'm a physician by training. I did my medical school from India, and then I did went to the US. I did my residency in New York City from NYU, and then I did my fellowship in hematology oncology from Rutgers Cancer Institute. And then I was a faculty there for a couple of years, and that was 2004. Then I saw a lot of my professors joining industry when New Jersey is full with big pharma, right? So all the big pharma companies, they were around us. And, at least I would say four of my professors, they reached the real top levels in different pharma companies like Merck, Johnson and Johnson, Roche. And after a very brief stint in academia for 2 years, then I thought, let's explore it. I mean, one of the reasons I joined industry, I didn't want to go into full-time practice, and I always wanted to have some bent of academia. But academia, even in the US, doesn't pay much, as you know. And even for doctors, there's a huge pay difference between private practice and academia. Huge, almost double, almost double. And industry was somewhere in the middle. And then I was talking to these people who went from academia to industry, and they sounded pretty, excited about industry, and they said that you do a lot of great work. So then I joined GSK. So I joined GSK as a junior physician, and it was a totally new world. Means it was like going through my internship again. It was really trying to learn new terminologies. Like when we have PT in medical terminology, it means prothrombin time. In PT in GSK was project team. So it just going through terminologies after terminologies means when people said IND, people said NDA, and this is I'm talking 21 years ago, right? So huge, like first 2 years, they were like going back to school. I mean, we were getting paid decently, but I really didn't know much.
Hmm.
And I thought I knew research because I'd done residency training, I did fellowship in clinical fellowship where I was involved in some manuscript writing and doing some retrospective data mining, but never did a real drug development, right? And so now I was in the serious work of drug development, though I had never done it before. And it was a tough time. And, there was a lot of times during those first 2 years when the question was always, should I go back to practice or should I go back to academia? And when I talked to many of the senior physicians in the industry, they said, if you survive the first 2 years, you'll survive it. So, and that was true. That was true. It was like going to some intense program, where you are learning a lot, where everybody else around you knows more than you, which was very different when I was a faculty member, right? So I don't know how many of you know how the medical system works in India and US. It's not much different. It's a very hierarchical system. So if you are a first year resident versus second year resident, it's expected that the second year would know more than the first year. It's expected that a fellow would know more than the resident. It's expected if you're a faculty member, then you know more than your residents and your fellows. Now, that's not true in industry. right? And after being in such a hierarchical society where if I order something, it gets done. Nurses listen to you. If the doctor writes something on an order sheet, it just gets executed. Unless you are grossly wrong, nobody questions it. Nurses don't question it. They're not, it's just a very hierarchical. Pharmacists don't question it. Sometimes pharmacists can ask, if you write something, then give me a citation to this. But it's such a hierarchical system where doctors are on the top. So coming from that ecosystem where, other than your peers, where you're not the boss because, there are other faculty members, but the other part of the ecosystem, which are the nurses, the students, the residents, the fellows, the pharmacists, the other staff in the hospitals, you are just by your degree, you exert a lot of power. And from that, when you come to industry, all that is gone. You have toxicologists who know more than you. You have pharmacokineticists who know more than you. You have pharmacologists who know more than you. You have statisticians who know more than you. You name it, right? You have project management who know how to do things. There are people who can arrange things better than you. So in every respect, people surrounding a physician in the industry, they know more than the physician, especially a physician like I was in 2004, 2005. So a huge learning. In first 2 years, always the thought was whether I should go back. And this was 2004, 2000 to 2006. And but I persisted because of two reasons. Salary was one, because if I had to go back to academia, I had to take a pay cut again. And it's a one-way street. I mean, you can go back to academia. It's not really a one-way street, but most people don't come to industry. Most people who go to academia, they remain in industry. So whoever goes to industry, it's like something you have done a sin, right? You have done something, especially for physicians, that why this guy did it. So going back is not easy either. You'll get it because there's so much demand, so that was one. Salary was one. Going back was not easy. Then, private practice. I always heard about horror stories about private practice, people working till death. So that was really, I never thought that as a serious option. So for me, the option was really going back to academia or continuing in industry. So I persisted, and then, luckily I got opportunity for a new drug application to the US FDA. So these are the two things which I always talk about when I talk about my industry journey over past 22 years, that I have been part of two successful new drug applications to the US FDA, where drug really got approved and people use it. So when I got that opportunity, it was great because then, and it was part of GSK itself. I remained in GSK for good 5 years. And so during that part, I learned a lot. I learned how uh, really, drug development happens. I learned a lot of the statistics. So, I mean, that was something which, as Indians, it's in our genes, I think, just like maths in our genes, stats, if you want to learn, you can learn. And so I read a lot of books on stats, learned those. So there's a lot of learning curve, but I was pretty happy when my first drug on which I worked really got FDA approved. I was part of the phase 3 clinical trials for that. So that was really a very, very good satisfaction. And then, one of my seniors had joined a small biotech as chief medical officer, and he wanted to recruit me there. He said, you have done enough big pharma now. Now you know all the rules of how big pharma works. Let's also learn how to break the rules, and let's see how we do shortcuts. So he recruited me into a small biotech called MGI Pharma, and I was the second physician. There were only two physicians there, as opposed to GSK, where I was like in my group, I was probably the 20th physician. There were lots of physicians at GSK and a lot of oncologists. So this was an oncology company. I was the second oncologist, both physicians, and then we ran the trial, and we did phase two, we did phase three, we got another drug approved. And these are the two approvals which I talk about. During my journey, I had about 20 failures, which I don't talk about. So a lot of failures along the way. We will kill the drug after phase one, we'll kill the drug after phase two. So far, I have been part of almost developing 20 drugs in which two succeeded and 18, we either killed or the trials failed along the way. And uh, uh, and this was already the small biotech. Now this was already 2016, 2017. So my journey in the US in industry has already been about 12, 13 years. And then, my parents were getting older here, and we were two brothers, both in the US. Somebody had to take care of my parents. My mother is on dialysis, is still on dialysis full time. She goes 3 times a week. So one of us had to come back. So not a coming back by choice, but I came back to India in 2017, and then I was looking what to do. Uh, Geography was not a concern. It had to be a big city in India. That was my only thing because my mother needed, good medical care. And then I got this job at Aurigene. So Aurigene at that time was trying to establish the clinical department. There was no clinical here. They were only doing preclinical. So there was a perfect match. I wanted to come to a big city. Origin was in a big city, wanted to start a clinical program. So I joined here and I started the clinical development group here. So now that group is about 30, 35 people. We do all different kinds of trials from phase one, phase two, phase three. Within Origin, I have put at least 10 drugs to clinic, both US FDA INDs as well as DCGI INDs. We have done trials US, India, and Australia. And the group has grown. And over time, I also got interested in CGT because in 2017, when I joined Origin, same year, two CAR-Ts got approved. And that made me interested in that. So it took me about 3 years to convince my big bosses, not in Origin, but in Dr. Reddy's labs, that we should invest in cell and gene therapy. Finally, they agreed in 2020. So it took me about 3 years to convince them. They got convinced. And then we also started a cell and gene therapy group, which became actually a bigger group than a clinical group. We recruited almost about 75, 80 people. It's a huge group which we recruited. We did a lot of preclinical work, a lot of R&D work, uh, you know, put two drugs into clinic. One we withdrew very quickly. One we have done phase one and phase two trials. And because of very, very strategic reasons, Naren knows all that. We have now decided to come out of cell and gene therapy. So, we remained in the area for about 5 years, but this is a very, very recent decision. It's public. I mean, we are not going to do a press release, but everybody knows about it. We have informed the DCGI, the Sadisco about it. We are informing our doctors tomorrow morning. So everybody knows that we are coming out of cell and gene therapy. But it had been a tremendous journey. And during this time, I think somehow I got to know Naren. I don't know when that happened, Naren, but it feels like I always know him. Naren is the kind of person well, all of us know him, right? So we know his personality. We know how, pleasing it is to talk to him and interact with him. And during his most recent visit to Origin, which was, I believe, 10 days ago. So he gave a phenomenal lecture, like always. And towards the end of it, I expressed my wishes to him that Naren, one of my group is ending. And I really want to do something different. Not for money, not for, but I just want to, trying to help people the way you do and try to see how things evolve. So Origin is still there, means we do continue to do the drug development which we used to do before cell and gene therapy, but cell and gene therapy is going to go away. So that's in very brief about my journey. I think this journey has made me very humble. I think if I remain in the medical profession as a direct patient giver, I probably would have been a different person. My journey would have been different. And that being a very, very hierarchical system, uh, clearly, whatever I learned there would be some incremental learning on the kind of patients I would be seeing, but not this kind of learning which I had in the pharmaceutical career. So I'm pretty happy with my decisions. And, I also want to thank Naren again for bringing me here. So that's in very brief about myself, Naren. I think I
Uh,
actually, it's not brief, I took good 10-15 minutes.
Not at all. No, thank you. This was really good. And Akhil, I think everything that you said sort of captures what I feel about you. Obviously, the knowledge that you have in the field is tremendous, and you've contributed a lot to the not just to Origin but to the ecosystem in India. And every conference that we go, you're very vocal about what needs to be done. But I think the parameters that jump out at me, especially after your presentation, are what you mentioned yourself: is humility, compassion, empathy. And these sort of jump out at you as soon as you said something. But why don't we open it up for question and answers? And just to tell you the format, we'll open it up for a few question and answers, and maybe there's some more detailed discussion. We can have that, and we'll end with what we call a rapid fire. So I'll ask you maybe 7 to 10 questions, one word answers at the end. So that's sort of the format of what we'll do. Why don't we go ahead? Virender has raised his hand.
Yeah. So, Akhil, thanks a lot for sharing your journey, and I think it means a lot uh, for all of us to know how, like, we always hear about like PhDs coming back or maybe engineers coming back, but not many doctors actually come back, and not many doctors come back and join industry. So, so how was your experience when it comes to industry in US versus India?
I think that's a great question, Virender, and I think I may have been lucky that the company I got was the culture was not very different from the US biotech culture. In some respects, they were, but I'll tell you how it was not different. And number one, a lot of people, especially at the senior level and the mid level, they have been to the US and come back. Like my boss, he had been to the US, he remained in the US for 20 years. The CSO here, he did his postdoc from MD Anderson. At the mid level, I would say almost 50% people either they have their PhDs abroad in the US or somewhere in Europe, or they have their postdocs abroad and remain in the US for time. So luckily, I got into a company where a lot of people had global exposures, and that clearly helped because they had seen the diversity. They had seen that because I hear when I'll tell you the reason I say this that I was lucky because when I built my clinical group, so we at the peak of our physician strength, we were 6 physicians, and all of these 6 physicians they were not fresh from their training. They had been to some company. And when they tell me the culture at Origin versus culture at the other companies, they conveyed that it's a very different culture at Origin. So I think I may have been lucky if I think I may not, this may not be a typical example of a company in India uh, because it's run by professional CEOs, professional scientists, not by an owner-driven company, as opposed to many other companies where those are owner-driven companies. So there's a difference which happens when the owner is a boss versus a professional is a boss, because the processes, they don't mean anything to the owner, right? Nobody can do anything to the owner. But to a professional CEO, he also has restraints, right? So I think with that perspective, I got really lucky that I was really in Origin is owned by Dr. Reddy's Labs. Even Dr. Reddy's Labs is run by professionals. Means our owners, the CEO is a professional. All the management council are professionals. Our owners who are Prashad and Satish Reddy, they're there in the board, but they're not in the day-to-day management. So which is very different than I would say any other company in India. So my experience in India from that perspective was not very different from US biotechs. Now, one thing which was there in US biotechs, there was a lot of churning because I was in the Boston area, and there's a lot of attrition because there's so many job opportunities there. So people would come and go. Nobody would be there in a biotech for like 8 years or 10 years. Average stay would be 4 years. Here, because of lack of, I would say, job opportunities, uh, people remain at Origin, right? Which is good and bad, right? The bad is you're not having the diversity. People remain, the culture becomes more homogeneous. That's the bad part of it. Good part of it is you just remain. You have very less attrition. So we have, like in Origin, you have a lot of people who are here for 20 plus years. A lot of people. You would not even find that at Pfizer or Merck or Amgen where Naren was, right? That 20 plus years, how many people you would have that at mid-level you will have 20 plus years? Because people change jobs. So the plus there, I would say, is there's a lot of cross-pollination of thoughts when people come from different companies, which is not there in India, because at least not at Origin. And the good thing is, you are together. So there's both good and bad with that. But I would say my experience has been pretty good. And I did not have a choice also, Nagesh. So I can tell you, we recruited our recruitment when we recruit very established people from the US, like all the people which I talk about in Origin who have global exposures. They were in the US for about, if they did PhD, then about 7 and 8 years. If they did not do PhD, then they're there for 3, 4 years. Now, the only two people who were in the US for 20 plus years. One is my boss Murli, and one is me. Only two people. And I came, I told you, because of a compulsion. I didn't have, I can't go back. And with Murli, I don't know why he came back. I really never asked him that question. He came back in 2004, and he went there in like 1986 or something. So he was also in the US for 18 years. So we are the only two who were in the US for a very, very long time. But we tried to recruit. I'll tell you, I tried to recruit almost 3 or 4 people who remained in the US for 8 to 10 years. And when they came back, they remained here only for 1 to 2 years. So in CGT, we recruited a bunch of people and they went back to the US. Now, so I could not retain them. I could not retain them. So that is one challenge which I see, that somehow our ecosystem, I don't count myself because, I had a compulsion to live here, right? I don't know what I would have done if I came here by choice. So, but I can tell you that anybody I recruited, I failed. I passed in recruiting, but I failed in retaining them in
Retention.
India.
No, I think very nicely described comparison of the two cultures. Let's see. Shamim has a question.
Yeah, hello, sir. It was really glad hearing you and your experiences. I was gonna ask you that you said the first 2 years of your career you were skeptical about staying back or going. How did you deal with it actually? Actually, I feel we have similar backgrounds. I worked with clinical research and I've done an internship at Dr. Reddy's before also. I've seen how that looks like, and I'm also currently in that phase that I'm doing job. I'm satisfied with it, but I feel like I've come here by compulsion. I've applied to bigger companies where you hear bigger names. You'll get that intention to be in it, right? But I couldn't get it. I feel that way. But I'm learning. But how do you cope up with yourself actually?
I think that's a great question, Shameen. I think each one of us may have such situations in our life where we would have a conflict, and we would have a conflict and see is what exactly is the right thing for me to do. There was one good thing in GSK. It was in the ecosystem in which I was, that they would give a mentorship program. They understood this, that especially for new people who are coming into industry, especially from academia and stuff. So GSK understood that. And what GSK was doing, they have a formal mentorship programs in which people would be, allotted, like the junior people like myself in 2004, 2005, we would be linked with a senior person with our own, background, with our own education, our own background, and have a weekly meeting with them. This would be a person who is not involved in the day-to-day projects. So this will be a totally different person. So with nothing to do, he cannot influence what's happening in the work. He
Mm.
just cannot. But
Mm.
he can listen to what your challenges are, and he can advise you. Just it's a one to one. That's where the advice would be, is that this is industry, this is not academia, this is not hierarchical. That's the way GSK trained, and I think that helped.
Yeah.
That definitely helped. That program definitely helped. So my suggestion to you, if you're having such conflicts, is to find somebody, because where you are, you may not have such a program. And if you don't have such a
Yeah.
program, then what do you do? So try to find some elderly figures who are not related to the projects, who are
Okay.
not related to your day-to-day work, because the day-to-day work, they would always be after you. If you are with my team, I'll be after you, right? To do this and do that. Then
Yeah.
that mentorship, it becomes difficult, because we're always challenging, we're always stressing that this work needs to be done. uh, but for your mentorship mentee relationship, that thing should not be there.
Yeah, I
It
think
should be.
wonderful
Yeah.
advice. Yeah, very wonderful advice. And I know Shamim, you know this very, very. You can
Yeah.
take this and move from there. Let's move on to
Yeah.
Chirag and see what question Chirag may have.
Hello all, so good evening. So myself Chirag Dada, and now currently I am doing PhD at an IPN Mohali. So in the department of medical devices and all. So sir, it was nice and interesting to hear your experience after your moving from US to India. So sir, we said I have one question. So what is your view of India becoming a leader in the biotech space? Means like as compared to Western countries and all. So India is lagging much behind in this biotech space and all. So sir, what is your viewpoint on this? And what should India adopt to that?
Yeah. No, Chirag, you're right. You're absolutely right. I think there is a big lag between where what we are doing in India versus what the Western countries have been able to do. Am I audible? I'm audible, right?
Yes, sir.
So, Chirag, what I was saying, that I think you're absolutely right. There is a, like, what we do in any company here, including my own, and what other countries have been able to do, including countries like China. We are at least, I would say, 8 to 10 years behind. The only platform where we may just be 2 3 years behind or 4 years behind may be cell and gene therapy. But if you look at antibodies, biospecifics, ADCs, we are way behind. And you are doing a PhD in medical devices. Medical devices also, I don't know the medical device industry at all, but it probably would be similar as drug industry. I feel that we probably would be behind there as well. And the main reason I feel is that the ecosystem has to evolve in two ways. One is the talent, which of course, you see all the Indians who have gone to the US, they do so well, look at all the top universities from Penn to Berkeley to MIT to Harvard, look at all the big tech companies as well as pharma companies. You'll find, statisticians, pharmacologists, biologists, chemists, even physicians, all from Indian origin, right? They do so well there. But the same people, when they come back to India, why they are not able to do well? I think the answer lies in your question, Chirag, that the the ecosystem has not developed, and this ecosystem can only develop if there are both people as well as money. So both of the things have to grow simultaneously. Now, people don't put money, like the investors don't put money because they think there are not enough companies. Now, there are not enough companies because there's not enough money. So it's a chicken and egg story. So, I was talking to one of the investors early on in my career here in India in 2019, and it was really to get some Indian investor, and they have invested in hospitals in India. And so being healthcare, I thought they may also invest in biotech. So me and my then boss, CSN Murthy, he was the CEO of Aurigene at that time. We were talking to him, and he said that there has to be 20 Origines for me to invest. If I am doing one Origene, I'm taking a lot of risk, and all of the money which I'm going to put may disappear. And if I have 20 Origins, I may share that risk. So the challenge in India is, I think it's people don't want. It's not like there's no money. Money is there. People don't want to put that money. And the reason they don't want to put that money is because there are not enough companies and not enough programs. And the reason there are not enough programs because people are not putting money. So it's a chicken, and it's. I think the only way I feel it can be solved is by the government. That the government has to step in, and they're stepping in. They're stepping in, and they're trying to help build the ecosystem. Myself, I've been part of. I would say at least. Uh, I've applied for at least six different grants, and five of them I got it. So, government is very, very supportive. We just got two grants of 100 crores each in the PREP program. Uh, so we applied for four. Two have been evaluated. Both of them we got. Third and fourth has not even been evaluated. The other ones which I'm talking about, our grant money range from 1 crore to 14 crores. So decent amount of money. So government is willing to give money, but they also and there is sufficient money. But people should ask for money and see is what kind of work government wants. Right now, government is very, very supportive of cell and gene therapy. So if you are doing something in cell and gene therapy and you want money, the chances that you'll get it if the work is real. So, in my view, Chirag, the only way it can come to a level which is desirable to us is if government keeps doing what it has just started doing in past 1 to 2 years and keeps doing it for next 5 years and build the ecosystem. And only when the ecosystem becomes developed in next 4 or 5 years, then private investors would come in. Until there's sufficient number of people, private, in what I have understood, private investors won't come because they think it's too risky.
Oh, very, very good summary, and I would completely agree with with what you're saying. Maybe more about this a little bit later. But I think it's Abhishek. Is it Abhishek?
Yes, Naren.
Oh, hi, Abhishek.
Hi, Akhil. I have a question. Say, you discussed about your two success stories, most successful, like clinical approvals and all. And you mentioned like you had seen, several failures as well. So in that case, would like to know how you overcome the failures and what motivates you or keep you motivated, to focus, refocus and work on the new projects.
Yeah. So one thing which I always try to convey when within my own company is that whatever we do in drug development, we have to focus on the patients. And it's very difficult, I can tell you. It's very difficult for scientists to focus on the patients. And Naren was saying it in his talk also 10 days ago when he gave a lecture at Aurigene that there are two approaches. One is a reductionist approach and the other is a holistic approach. So what happens, Avinash, is that what I see that people are just looking at a specific, like if they want to degrade a target, they're just looking for that degradation. Many people are not interested or they don't understand why they're doing it and if this would help the patient or not. So to answer your question, Avinash, I mean, drug development is full with failures, right? If you look at all the data of success rates in drugs, it ranges from 7% to 10%, and that's all therapeutic areas combined. If you look into oncology, where I'm working, it's like 5-6%. It's on the lower end. So, you have to get satisfaction in baby steps. You have to get satisfaction because if I only get satisfaction, if my drug gets approved, finally, then I would only be happy twice in my life, which is, which is not a good way to live a life. So you of course have to take pleasure in intermediate successes also. And when your IND gets approved, when you go from phase one to phase two, when a patient gets benefit, I can tell you when I was doing CAR-T and CAR-T program is now closed, almost 90% patients they benefited. They had a response, and most of them is still in remission and continuing on response. So, you derive your satisfaction from individual patients also. So, I think it's not just the two big successes which I highlight when I'm introducing myself, but I think even in the failures we learn. We in fact learn more from the failures than our success stories. In failures, many times there are some bad decisions which I would have made or I would have recommended. So you have to learn from those. So I think each particular drug development of any drug has a story to tell, and you have to learn from those and try to satisfy yourself with those learnings. Otherwise, it would be very, very tough if
Yeah.
we really look for drug approvals finally.
Yeah, that's great advice. Find pleasure in those small things also, right? That's so important in the drug development process. Before we come to Nagesh, Aswad has asked a few questions on the chat. I'll just ask one or two, and then maybe we can go to Nagesh. I'll just pick a few. Decision making in pharma is very different, and in CRO, and so any comments on decision making both at the professional level, at the personal level, that you have used for yourself? Like how do you approach decision making?
So, so I think thanks, Aswad. I think that's a very, very key question. And one thing is the decision making is collective, right? The decision making is not just one person. So yes, if I'm writing a protocol, what goes into the eligibility criteria and what is the dose limiting toxicities, that would be my decision and my team's decision, three, four people together. But bigger decisions, let's say if we're doing an IND, if you're deciding to take a drug from phase one to phase two, they're not individuals, they're not decisions of one person. So, a lot of debate happens, a lot of discussions happens. So, each of the decision goes through a lot of, rigorous review. We actually have a scientific review committee where, people who have done drug development, who have successfully got drug approvals, they're part of those. So, one of the challenges which I see as well, and I'm being very, very honest here, is decision level, if left to an individual like myself, would be conflicted, and that's why it's not left. Because when you look at the financials, now I'm talking the financials to individuals. They're linked to how much you work you do. So that's a challenge. And it's like I don't know how many of you know how the physician practices are run in the US in oncology. In oncology, I'm giving you an example so that you can understand the same thing happens to all humans when oncologists are not different. So, in oncology, oncologists they give medicines, they give chemotherapies or antibodies to patients, right? And unlike India, in the US, 80% of cancer care is in the community. That means that doctors have their own offices, they have their own infusion centers, and they give the drug there. So they buy the drug and then they give it. Then they get reimbursement on those drugs. Now, the reimbursement is always, the base price plus X%. So let's say if I'm using a $100 drug and I make 6% on that, I made $6. But if I use a $10,000 drug, I make $600. So as an oncologist, what would I do? Instead of a $100 drug, I will use a $10,000 drug because I am getting a percentage, right? And the decision making there is individual, like the oncologist decides. He can use, two drugs may not be very, very different, but the prices may be very different. And if you use a more costly drug, you make more money legally. Legally, there's nothing illegal about it. Okay, so it's a conflict, right?
Um,
Same conflict happens in decision making in at our levels. If I do more, I get paid more. So
Yeah.
let's say I'm running 5 programs versus I'm running 3 programs. When I'm writing my individual accomplishments at the end of the year, which goes for review, I can write more, right? So
Yeah.
if you do more in general, you get paid more.
Yeah.
So and that's a conflict which we have. That whenever we try to make a decision, it's very difficult to keep our selfish interests aside. And what we end up doing is we err on the side of doing more. And what happens is to contain that, the decision making is doesn't belong to an individual. And that's why these big decisions, they go through a committee where people who are neutral to it, they're also getting paid, but they are not getting paid on if you do more, you get paid more. They're getting paid for the time there. And they are very independent. So they can speak their mind. They're not emotionally attached to the drug. So all those. So in response to your question, I think the big decisions we propose, and we propose to committees, and the committees decide. That's the way it happens, and that's the way it happens in big pharma in the US as well. And despite all those, the fact of the matter is, we make so many wrong decisions. We make so many wrong decisions. If we were making only right decisions, our success rate would be at least 40% instead of 10%, right? And
Yes.
I don't know how many of you would know, there's a there is a bio study out of 2016 which got repeated in 2024, and there's more data came in this year. Bio study showed that the overall success rate for drug development, when a drug goes to clinic to when it gets regulatory approval, 9.6% in 2016,
Wow. Wow.
was 8.2% in 2024. So it went down. I mean, if you look at, and now I was just reading somewhere it went more down last year. So, every year FDA approves about 46 to 50 drugs every year. I mean, you take it last year, take it 2 years ago. There were only 2 years, 2015 and 16, when they approved 2025 drugs. And every year, 1,000 new phase 3 trials are started. So, so overall, our success rate is 5%. It's not even 9%, I think, what people, by their studies, people show, and it's going down. So our intelligence should not be going down, but something is there in decision making which is going down, despite all these, safety nets.
Yeah.
So people,
Yeah.
so the thing is, you look at artificial intelligence, you look at all these technologies, we know biology more, but our drug approval rates are not going higher, they're going lower. So definitely your question, Aswad, is very, very important decision making. We need to do something about it. I don't know what. It's a global problem. It's not a problem of an Indian company or a company in California or Boston only, all over the world.
Wow, fantastic answer. I mean, lot of different gems you gave us. I knew that the rate was low, but I didn't know it was this low. But we'll talk more about that. Nagesh, do you have a question? While we are waiting for Nagesh's question, I'll just read another question from Aswad, which I think is interesting. From your perspective. He's asked a question from the US and India perspective. What is the difference between people who have 5-6 years experience versus 18 years experience in your example? But maybe I'll ask that question in a slightly different way. Is as the students here and all of us who are in this group, what kind of how do you gain scientific eminence? What are the kind of things that you have to do to think about growth of your career from, let's say, from 5 years to 10 years to 15 years? Are there specific things that you can do, or is it just organic growth? I know
I
maybe.
think that's a tough question. Most people, they probably don't aim what they want to do in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line. They just, grow organically. They just keep doing whatever opportunities they come to their life. But I feel that, and it's a philosophical thing, right? I mean, there's no right or wrong answer here. I feel that if somebody really tries to put objectives, like real objectives for themselves, which they themselves know that where they want to reach in 5 years, or where they want to reach in 10 years, and where they want to reach in 15 years. And then work towards them, talk to your boss and say that, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to reach. Tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. So if you have such an approach, then definitely you would uh, grow, I would say, more rapidly, if that's the right term. But most people don't do that. I can tell you that among all my reportees, none of them ask me this question. None of them tell me that, Akhil, they suddenly would come and they say, I want a promotion. But they never tell me that, Akhil, I want to reach this place in 4 years or in 8 years. Tell me what I should do and I'll do it. Because if you ask such a question to your boss, he would be compelled he would be compelled to give you an answer, because then he cannot just not answer you, right? He's your boss. He has to answer you. And then he is actually giving his commitment to you that, okay, this is what you need to do, and this is what I'll do for you. So my suggestion would be is not uh, just be reactive to whatever comes, but be proactive, and with your line function, and request feedback, active request, not just as a checkbox, because that's where most of the things actually end up happening. That all these assessments which we do, they end up being checkboxes.
Yeah.
But if it's not a checkbox, if you really ask and say that, I don't care what you're writing, what you're giving me an 8 or a 9, I want to reach here, and tell me what do I need to do. I think that's the question you should really ask, and I think you would succeed.
Yeah, no, I think excellent. And what a fantastic answer. It is up to the person to take responsibility of their own career growth, right? That's what you're sort of saying. All right. So if there are no further questions, let me just wait a minute to see if there are any questions. You can unmute and ask. Otherwise, we'll go to the rapid fire.
Oh my goodness.
Very simple questions. Very simple. Nothing, nothing difficult. Uh, okay, Nagesh is saying, I've been working in clinical operations and data management domain now, and I'm working on building an ECRF platform, which has made me realize there's a lot to be learned apart from science and operations. I would like to know from your perspective, which are the four pillar skill sets you believe that an individual must learn for business and personal growth. Any
So it's Nagesh, I think that's again a very general question, right? So I understood your background, because I've done that myself, data management and ECRF development. Those things I learned early on in my career. I don't do it myself now because there are other people who work in my team who do this. But for your own personal and professional growth, I would what I have seen is there are two kinds of people who really grow, and both of them needs very hard work. One kind of people are those who really have a huge depth in something. Whatever you're doing, you're the best there. And these are more rare people, by the way.
mm, mm,
So it's very difficult to say that, okay, I would go deep into this and I would climb up the ladder. The other kind of people I have seen grow who try to understand a lot of things, breadth. They may not have a depth, but they would have a breadth. They would know some statistics, they would know some data management, they would know some clinical, they would know some regulatory, they would know something of everything, where they can talk to every kind of person. And these people become very, very important. I have seen more of these kinds who have grown, that who may not have a depth, but they can talk to all different line functions. They
mm,
know some statistics, so they can talk to a statistician. They may not do hardcore statistics. They know some regulatory, they know some data management. So I think all of these different, if you're in the clinical part, and which you are, because you talked about clinical operations in ECRF, data management, I think you should look into the breadth of it, because in the depth also, you would succeed if you're really, really good into that area. That people really come to you if there is a specific problem. But my suggestion would be is to broaden the horizon as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think fantastic. Difficult question, but a very succinct answer, depth and breadth. No, thank you.
I would like to add something in entrepreneurial perspective. What you will suggest that the whether the great science or the execution uh, kind of the perspective, you will suggest that you feel that you might reconsider it during your experience in previous
So both are needed. I was never an entrepreneur, right? Means I was, I've always worked in established companies. So
yeah.
it's not like I did something on my own. It was never like that, right? I never had to do HR. I never had to do finance. I never had to do project management. So, as an entrepreneur, you have to do all of these things. You have to register a company. You have to file the taxes. You have to talk to the CA. So those things are taken care of in my. So I have never done what, Avinash, you may be trying to do. But I would say that both would be important.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
science and the
yeah,
execution both would be important. If the science is not good, things are not going to work. And if the science is good, it's a possibility that lack of right execution may lead to failure.
yeah. Okay. All right then, Aswad. I see you've reached your destination.
Yes.
I don't know if one final, if you want to ask one any final thing before we close.
Mm.
I would, yeah, I wanted to expand more on what we learn from failures, especially in the clinical programs, and what sort of efforts are you as a team putting into to use the new big data analysis tools to sort of go back and see what went wrong. Was it something really easily fixable that wasn't identified, or was it something that wasn't really fixable? And then using the holistic tools, as we briefly touched upon, could those be leveraged in order to get there?
Yeah, so Aswad, while we have not done formal analysis of failures, because once there's a failure and a decision is made, people just put everything under the carpet, right? Nobody wants to talk about it. As a company, as a team, they go to their next project, right?
Yeah.
That's what happens. So a formal analysis or a formal report, actually, I've never seen or ever have been part of. Uh, but in our own, brain, mind, we do some analysis, right? Which is also led by our own biases. So because it's being done by one person, it may not be right. But in every case where I failed, and when I look back, I thought there was some challenge with decision making. So in hindsight, things look so clear.
Mhm.
uh, the problem is when you really have that challenge, when you're really trying to suggest or recommend a decision, you don't have the result. And for that reason, it's very difficult. But in hindsight, things are very clear now. In hindsight, once the results are there, then we say, oh, why didn't I see this? Why didn't I see that? Right. So, but in every case, I have found gaps that in my own, like somehow consciously or unconsciously, there were things which blindfolded me. So I would be very honest with you that at least in my situation, I would say that there was always some gaps. Either we overread the data, we should not have read it the way we read, or let's say if I recommended something on the basis of 20 patient data, right? And it did not pan out when I did that in 300 patients. Now, of course, in retrospect, I would say that, I should have done my phase two in 50 patients or 60 patients. So, the problem is when you're right at that minute and you have to recommend some decision, and there's so many forces acting on it. You have some You have to show your bosses that these many studies you are starting in a year, or these many phase twos are you're doing. So I think a lot of biases come in. So I would say that there are definitely gaps in decision making, despite all the safety nets which people try to provide, and that's why our success rate is that low.
Yeah. Um, Good. Thank you. Again, this is, failures are so important to analyze, and we don't spend time analyzing them. We can actually learn so much more from them if we do. But it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. Okay, so let's go in the last few minutes, quick round of rapid fire. Um, 3 words that describe yourself. You can take your time.
Uh, uh, 3 words that describe
Describe you.
myself.
You can take anything. Don't have to overthink this.
Yeah, I would say I have a desire to be helpful.
Yes.
I may not be helpful, but I have a desire. I definitely have a desire that I'm helpful. Uh, then I would say I'm a hardworking person. That I would say that I'm there. And then the third would be is I want to take everybody along with me, and that may or may not be a good thing, because sometimes you have to take a strong stance, and that becomes difficult if you're trying to take everybody along.
Yeah. No, I think very good, very good. Um, uh, which is your favorite teacher in school, high school, or college who sort of influenced you the most?
I would say, I would take the name of him. His name is Dr. Anup Mishra,
Hmm.
and he's an endocrinologist. He was a personal physician to the Prime Minister when I was in medical school,
Hmm.
at AIMS, New Delhi. So he was very, very tough, very, very tough.
Hmm.
He would ensure, and he told me one thing which I was a very average student, and at AIMS, and he would always make a little bit fun of me. He would ask tough questions if I'm unable to, and I don't know how many of you know how medical teaching happens. Medical teaching happens at the bedside. So what happens is, the teacher would take about 7, 8 students with him, and he would take it to a patient, and there would be something with the patient, and then in front of the patient in India, in US they don't do that, but in front of the patient he would ask you tough questions, and he would really ensure that you start sweating. you know so that's the way. So he was very, very tough, and he was really, really tough questions, and I still remember a phrase which he would tell me. He said, the mediocrity breeds mediocrity. That's what he would say. And
Hmm.
I could never understand that at that time. And I would say, why is he saying that? And I was a good student in my high school.
Hmm.
That's why I went to AIMS, right? But at AIMS, I was very, very average. And
Hmm.
this guy would always make fun of me. But finally, I think I understood. I, in fact, complained about him to my father. My father was dean at IIT BHU. And I said that, what kind of a professor he is. He always makes fun of me. Is this what all you also do in your engineering schools? And he said, no, 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 engineering schools are much different. So, but to make a long story short, I think he prepared me for the very, very tough things in life.
Wow.
So that's why, while at that time he didn't like it, in retrospect, I think he trained me well to ask tough questions, and to ensure that we can deal with unpleasant circumstances. So that's one thing he prepared me for. That now, if there's any unpleasant circumstances, I can sail through it. So
Wow.
that's the way he was a very, very good teacher in retrospect, I would say.
Excellent, excellent. So now, my general question, which I ask about, I'll ask each one individually, but I'll give you a heads up. It's food, song, and book. Favorite food other than Indian? Obviously, all of us love Indian, but other than Indian, which is your favorite food category?
You're asking me, right?
Yes, food.
I like Mexican, actually. I like
Mexican.
Mexican.
Oh, very nice, right? And any genre of music that you listen to, or any song that you listen to that you
I listen to the old ghazals like the Jagjit Singh types.
old, yeah, yeah, good, good. And any book that you're reading or have read recently that you would recommend?
I have not read recently a book. I usually read books.
Hmm.
I have not read recently in past 2, 3 months. I
I
have
saw a book on your desk about the Vertex drug.
pharmaceutical. Yeah, 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 yeah. So that was actually not the Vertex. It was a pharmacyclist's truck. He
Okay,
wrote in
okay.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
It was the blood money. Something. The cover
Yes,
is
yes,
blood
yes,
money.
yes. The red colored book. Yes, 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 yes. Um, a little difficult question now. Next one, slightly difficult. Will make you think, and you can take your time. If you were to have a superpower, what superpower would you like to have had?
These are very, very tough questions, Naren. Means I would really want the superpower. It's like if somebody could make me humble, if somebody could make me realize my own shortcomings, that power, if God could give me, that I can understand my gaps quicker, so that I can recommend better decisions.
Hmm. Um, the next one is any new thing you're doing now?
So new thing, we are doing a lot of new things, right? Uh,
Both professional and personal. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the personal, I would say actually I'm doing something new. I became part of the management committee at my community.
Oh,
In India, you have communities like gated community. There's something called
yes.
management committee. I've never done it. It's a thankless job. People say you get a lot of galis. Uh, whatever you do, of course you don't get paid for it, but it's you at least work 5, 6 hours a week, and people would find faults. But I've never done it before, so I thought, and nobody was volunteering for this year, so I said, okay, let me go and,
Wow,
and try.
that's nice. That's nice. Okay, and then maybe last question is just a general one. Any from everything that we've talked about so far, anything that jumps out to you? Advice for students or entrepreneurs or young professionals?
No, my advice is, number one, hard work. You do a lot of hard work. There's no substitute to hard work. A lot of people are intelligent, but if they're not doing hard work, then they would not succeed. And what I said that make your goals which are realistic and a little bit challenging too, and have 1 year goal, 3 year goals, and try to evaluate it again, and rather than just keeping it in your brain, write it, because if you don't write it you will forget it. And it's a little bit when you write it, then you also think more about it, because now you're putting it to pen, right? You may yourself read it later,
Yeah.
so it better be good. So rather than just doing it in your mind, write your goals, that okay, this is what I wrote on this day, that this is what I will do in 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years.
But again, thank you everyone. I know it's late in India. Thank you again everyone for calling in, and see you next month.